because of the way I left this mount on there, there was 2 little bolts to get the power steering reservoir off too. So this is the last sensor I have hooked up, and just for disassembly purposes, I'm going to get it out of there. There is a heat shield on the side of the motor here. Those 2 10mm bolts. And this heat shield comes out, then 1 13mm, and the whole bracket comes out. Now, as you can see, that plug comes undone. There's a little grommet there. And then you just pull the whole thing out the other side. That bolt here, that's also holding the heat shield. There's a little bracket on there that just lets it loose. Bring that out. And then I actually have the whole wiring harness just over here. And on the new motor, I'm just going to show you this way because it's easier. These 3 10mm bolts are holding on the power steering pump. And I'm also just going to leave that behind and reattach it when this motor's in the car. 2 shorter ones in the front and a longer one in the back, and then that will fall off and you can just put the belt back on when you put the new one on too. Alright, so in the end, after some pushing of the lines, prodding, using a little bit of a pry bar, power steering sitting right there, the AC sitting down on the other side, we're clear over here, and yeah, I'm just picking this thing up on out of the car. My light's in the way there, but we'll just continue jacking this up. I'm not going to be able to do this one-handed because I'm going to be pulling the motor towards me while I get it up and out of the car, but you can get it out through the top. As you can see, when that exhaust piece comes up, it's a little close, and obviously the corner of the windshield is going to be the most dangerous place to get snagged. When you're doing this, something that you could do differently is take off this alternator. That would save you actually a good bit of room. I probably should have done that. If I can't get it, I will do that because it's just these 2 bolts right here. Here it comes. We're out. When you do this, guys, definitely 100% get that alternator off of there. It's way too close to the windshield for comfort, especially if you're by yourself. So it's 2 15mm bolts on the front, and that thing will fall right off, and that'll give you a lot more room to just get the thing out of there easily without having to worry about it. Having to do things this way makes me miss my actual shop, but we'll get built back up eventually at Wallace Automotive. And that looks like enough to be clear to me. Get it a little closer to the ground. All right. As you can see, I got some sockets that I dropped down there, but the AC is still in here and hooked up. Power steering still in here and hooked up. Yeah, transmission's there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some parts off of that motor, the mounts and some other parts, after I clean this up in here. And the goal is going to be to get the other motor in here with maybe a little bit less parts on it, so it goes in a little bit easier because it is a really tight fit to get out of the top of this thing. And then we'll start reassembly. So here's the new motor going in. That's the motor I just took out. What I'm going to do is take all the bolts that I put into this one, exhaust bolts, bell housing bolts, AC bolts, everything. I'm going to take all of that and transfer it to the motor that I just took out so that this one is clean and ready to go in, and then when I'm putting it back together in the car, I can pull the bolts directly out of the old motor and put them exactly where they go on the new one. So this is the junkyard motor. I had to take the harness off of it, and I took the intake off to get it off. So on yours, you might not have to take the harness off, but the harness that came with it had a bunch of broken connectors, a bunch of cut-off connectors, a bunch of smashed connectors. So taking it off for me was kind of necessary. I have the harness that I took off right here, still in good shape, but as you can see, this comes off just with the motor, and then plugs from the computer just with the motor, so you actually don't need, I don't think, to take the harness off to get this engine out, you can just take it off with the harness, and if the junkyard's nice, they'll give you one with a good harness. Otherwise, you'll be swapping it over. Now I threw the alternator back on. I put it in without the alternator, so there was a lot more wiggle room. Like I said, it'd be a better idea to take it off so you're not so close to the windshield. Now, after putting the engine in, and it's, right above where it's going to go, everything's lined up. I threw the alternator on now, just so I don't have to deal with it when it's lower in there and harder to get at. It's just 2 bolts, one nut on a stud on the top, and then 1 bolt going through it on the bottom. This is where the alternator mounts. 1 stud on the top, and then it goes over that piece, and then a nut through this first hole right there. A bolt through the first hole right there. So I apologize that this video is getting a little less detailed as I go, but it's really hard to do a lot of this stuff one-handed. I got this expansion tank out of the way, dropped the mount back on the motor, put the bolts on. I'm going to tighten those bolts up. The side of the motor is sitting almost where it should be on the tranny, so I might just put a jack underneath it and then lower this side down just so it lines up better. I put the motor mount on and then just put these bolts in, so this side of the motor was on, and then I took the strap off this side and just put it on this side so I can get it lined up with the transmission and then put together. You guys don't have to do this exactly the way I'm doing it. I know you're probably getting more information on how the car came apart, but you can do this through the top, and this is just how I'm going about it. Kind of a lot of other engine swaps I've done this way, and it works out pretty well. So I'll keep going here. So now this is where I'm sitting with the new engine and transmission by each other. So I have this strap on this side of the engine, and I have a floor jack down there on the underside of the transmission. And what I'm trying to do is just line up the bell housing and this, part of the engine together, and trying to get the engine onto the dowels that were in the transmission or in the engine, whichever way they separated. You do not use the transmission bell housing bolts to pull the engine and transmission together. It's not going to be lined up properly. It's going to strip threads. It's going to just lead to problems. Get the engine and transmission together by, something rigged up like this to get the engine onto those alignment dowels. In the back of the engine here, this is right underneath the firewall. I'm still on top though, right underneath the head. I just got this dowel to fall in to the transmission. The other dowel's in. Now you can see how nice the engine and transmission line up. The seam's perfect. So this bolt went in by hand. I can loosen it by hand. I can tighten it by hand all the way in. I'm going to put in the rest of the bolts now, and we'll get the engine and transmission all mated up. Then get the torque converter bolts in. Then I can get this hoist out of the way and continue reassembly. Back to the front of the motor, right underneath the water neck. These bolts, seam is perfect. Everything's going in as it should. None of these bolts should be forced. Check the threads before you start putting everything together, before you put the new engine in. But I'm using one of my smallest 1/4-inch ratchets with a 13mm socket, and I'm just running these bolts in, and it should not take any force, any effort at all to get these bolts in. If it does, something is torqued, something is wrong, something's at a weird angle, and you got to find that before you keep going, because these are all going in, no problem, just the way they should. If they don't, stop what you're doing, make sure everything's lined up, double check that everything's free. Over here, the AC I didn't connect yet, but it moves free. The exhaust moves free. Just go through and check everything. And this is all lined up and bolted in, and the motor mount is in on the other side. So now we're just going to continue with reassembly, get the torque converter bolts in, and then start laying out the harness, and we're almost there. All these bolts on this side I laid down on this box. You don't have to use an O'Reilly's box. You can use Napa or whatever kind of box you want, or no box at all if you're that kind of guy. laid down here and got all the back bolts in, everything snugged up, and then when all the bolts were in, went through and tightened them up pretty good. So there was partial harness, just some random wires that were still in the car that didn't come off with the regular engine harness. Those 2 starter wires, that ground that goes to the back over there, this one that goes up to the computer, and then this stuff that goes down by the AC and alternator. So I don't think this is going to bite me as of yet, but I'm going to lay the harness in the car. That's the crank sensor down there. So I'm going to start by getting that down there, lay this out, and like I said before, when you lay it back on the engine, there's only, one place most of the things are going to go. So, those 2 big sensors line up. You got a coil and injector on each side, a coil and injector on each side, those cam sensors over there. It should be pretty simple to get back on there. So this is the old motor. I just want to show you something quick. So for the power steering belt back here and for the power steering here, I'm not sure how the factory says to do it, but there is no tensioner. So you have to stretch this belt onto the pulley. So I use some zip ties because there's holes in the power steering pulley. So I just zip tied to the top and then put, zip ties here to hold this in place. But, one back here to slide, one up here to slide, and then I just turned the motor over a tiny bit and got the pulley on. So I'll show you what it looks like on the car, but if you have another way of doing it, that's great. I'm just giving you a way to do it if you don't. So now this is on the car. Sorry, it's really hard to try to get a video of this, but you can see I put some zip ties on there. This is already turned, so the zip ties started off at the bottom, and I put them in an orientation so they would be able to roll when I turn the motor over. You don't have to turn it over much to get the pulley belt to fall on. And then, if I can get it up there, you can actually, hopefully, see the 2 zip ties on the belt up there. So those started off at the top of the pulley. So I just turned it over until it brought the belt on. Now I just have to cut all these zip ties and I'll be ready to roll. Alright, so back up top, I got those zip ties off, that belt is on. I have the O2 sensors back in, the exhaust bolted back up, all the wires connected. Got to get this bracket off of the new motor that they just bent off, and then get this bracket down. But harness is on the end. Almost forgot the heat shield. Don't forget the heat shield. After I get the intake on, I'm going to go to the bottom. I already have the CV bolted onto the engine. The AC is back on, alternator's back on, everything's ready to go. So I'm going to take care of this up here, go down underneath, turn the motor over now, get the torque converter bolts in, throw the starter on, connect any more wires that are straggling, and then we can fill this thing with fluids and see what happens. On the back, the motor is connected. Everything over here is ready to go. Everything over here is ready to go. I'm going to grab the intake and put that on just to make sure it doesn't run into anything. So I know I'm fast forwarding through the reassembly here, but I hope if you took it apart or watched the video on taking it apart and did it, that putting it back together isn't the biggest hassle. So I have these bolts in but not tightened down yet, just in place in case I need to take it back off for some reason. I see these hoses back here I didn't put on yet, and it might be a little more difficult, but it looks like it's going to be pretty straightforward. So, ground's back on. Like I said, the harness is back on. Things are lining up where they're supposed to be. So I'm underneath the car now. I changed the oil in the junkyard motor. Got the exhaust hooked up. Got the CV back on. Everything's together. All the bolts are in. Last torque converter bolt to go on, and then we'll be able to put the rest of the motor together on top and try to fire this thing up. So torque converter bolts, some have it, some don't. I really would advise you guys to put some Loctite on the threads, either blue or orange. just to make sure that they don't back out. If they back out, then your flex plate will rattle and crack eventually, or at the very least rattle, and you don't want to have to be going in here to check these bolts or have a customer come back to get these bolts, or thinking that you messed up their motor or something because these bolts came loose. So just a little blue or a little orange Loctite, no red obviously. And as you guys can see in here, we're off. It's burning off a little residual coolant that spilled when I filled it. No big deal. So, there you have it, guys. I'm just going to button it up. I'll come back when all the covers are back on and everything. Windshield wipers are on. Cap's already on over there. Put this cap on, and there we have it. Still got to put this on underneath. Unfortunately, the junkyard motor, instead of taking these out, the Neanderthals that took that motor out of the car just snapped them off, so I have to get those plastic pieces out of there. But, yep. No extra bolts. Everything's back in its place.